Biological survival is dictated by thermodynamics. Inside human cells, enzymatic reactions are locked to a strict temperature dependency. Even minor deviations can drastically accelerate or completely halt our basal metabolism. Because of this requirement, humans operate as homeotherms. Unlike poikilotherms, whose internal state simply mirrors the weather, we generate and maintain our own core temperature completely independent of the ambient environment. We sustain this independence through a continuous, dynamic equilibrium. It is a biological scale, constantly weighing internal heat production, thermogenesis, against external heat loss, thermolysis. When this scale tips beyond the body's compensatory limits, the resulting state is dysthermia. This is a systemic failure that directly threatens cellular integrity and life itself. This anatomical diagram highlights the central core in red. Comprising the thoracic organs, viscera, brain, and muscles, it operates strictly at 37 degrees Celsius. Surrounding this is the peripheral envelope, skin and tissue. Acting as an exchange zone, its temperature fluctuates safely between 31 and 35 degrees. Thermal energy naturally moves down a gradient, flowing from the warm body out to a colder environment through 4 distinct physical mechanisms. The vast majority of heat escapes via radiation, transferring energy as electromagnetic waves to account for 60% of our total heat loss. Another 22% is lost through evaporation, primarily as liquid sweat converts into vapor. The remaining heat dissipation occurs via convection through passing air currents at 15% and conduction through direct physical contact at 3%. On the production side of the equation, our baseline thermogenesis is highly variable. It is constantly influenced by our age, physical activity levels, and daily nocturnal rhythms. Ultimately, the peripheral envelope serves a dual physiological purpose. It acts as both a protective thermal shield and an active exhaust system, adjusting constantly to maintain that pristine 37-degree environment deep inside the core. The biological processor calculating all these adjustments is the hypothalamus. Operating as an absolute control center, it continuously integrates thermal data and commands effector organs to respond. Looking at this thermal information pathway, we can trace the afferent signals. Sensory inputs continuously travel from the ambient environment, the skin, and the central core directly into the hypothalamus for processing. The body's response depends entirely on which region is stimulated. The posterior hypothalamus detects cold and immediately triggers thermogenesis and heat conservation. It executes this by commanding skeletal muscles to shiver, physically generating heat, while forcing cutaneous vasoconstriction to trap that heat deep within the core. Conversely, the anterior hypothalamus reacts to excess heat. It initiates thermolysis while simultaneously signaling a decrease in internal heat production. The physiological effectors here are sweating for maximum evaporative loss and cutaneous vasodilation to quickly dump core heat into the peripheral envelope. For clinical exams, memory recall here must be exact. The posterior controls the cold response, the anterior controls the heat response, and shivering is strictly categorized as a mechanism of active thermogenesis. By translating external thermal threats into these specific systemic commands, the hypothalamus acts as the master integrator, holding our thermal balance scale dead center. When external heat loss entirely overwhelms our maximal physiological defenses, that scale crashes, resulting in accidental hypothermia. This clinical state is defined by a core temperature dropping below 35 degrees Celsius. The pathophysiology generally splits into 2 categories. Either the environment simply exceeds the body's maximum rewarming capacities, such as during cold water immersion, or there is an internal disturbance, like severe drug intoxication or profound hypothyroidism that disables the compensatory mechanisms from the start. This table maps hypothermia staging. Severity links to circulatory arrest. Stage 1, below 35 degrees, presents marked shivering. Below 32 degrees, stage 2 begins. Shivering ceases, causing confusion and bradycardia. Below 28 degrees, coma ensues. By stage 4, below 24 degrees, cardiac arrest occurs. The systemic toll along this descent is massive, including severe metabolic acidosis, hypovolemia, and a drastic lethal reduction in overall cellular metabolism. Hypothermia is a progressive systemic shutdown. The body powers down organ by organ, the exact moment compensatory heat production is depleted. Tipping the balance the other way creates a distinct pathophysiology. Hyperthermia is a core temperature exceeding 37.5 degrees due to an accumulation of endogenous or exogenous heat. Importantly, the hypothalamic set point remains completely unchanged. This includes extreme clinical forms like heat stroke, a true medical emergency pushing core temperatures over 40 degrees, and malignant hyperthermia, a severe pharmacogenetic reaction triggered by specific anesthetics. It also accounts for serious drug-induced states. Neuroleptic malignant syndrome causes severe muscular hypertonia, while serotonin syndrome presents with toxic neural stimulation and myoclonus. Fever operates completely differently. Unlike hyperthermia, fever is a regulated defense mechanism where the central set point is actively modified. This flowchart outlines fever's mechanism. Infection stimulates macrophages to release pyrogenic cytokines, IL-1 beta, TNF-alpha, and IL-6. These trigger prostaglandin E2, raising the hypothalamic thermostat. Paradoxically, because the new set point is higher, the patient feels cold, triggering severe shivering to reach this elevated target. The diagnostic distinction is clear. Hyperthermia is an uncontrolled accumulation of heat fighting against a normal thermostat, while fever is a highly regulated, weaponized adjustment of the thermostat itself. Biological survival requires constant, unconscious vigilance. The hypothalamus must continuously calculate and balance thermogenesis and thermolysis to keep us strictly at 37 degrees. We defend against the cold by engaging the posterior hypothalamus to produce heat, and we combat excess heat via the anterior hypothalamus to accelerate heat loss. A catastrophic tip toward the cold yields accidental hypothermia, driving the body toward cardiorespiratory failure the moment our shivering mechanisms collapse. On the hot side, we must carefully distinguish between hyperthermia, where our thermolysis mechanisms are simply overwhelmed, and fever, where pyrogens deliberately elevate the internal set point. Recognizing these rigid physiological boundaries, and precisely how they break, provides the foundation necessary to diagnose and manage dysthermia before the biological scale tips beyond recovery.